Ferocious Katrina continues to make it on shore. Thanks for joining us. Hurricane Central here at the Weather Channel. I'm Marshall Cease.
And I'm Heather Tash. Gulfport, Mississippi is one of those places that has gotten hit very hard here. You can see some of the damage that we're already finding here with some of the trees being knocked down. And look at here, too, some of the roofs. And you can see that it's starting to rip some of the shingles off of that. It's going to get a lot worse, too.
Jim Cantori has been reporting live from Gulfport, Mississippi. The last report by radio or by telephone, because we're unable to get a signal through that mess that you're seeing on your screen right now. We have some highways underwater there. The Highway 90, which is a major thoroughfare to the casinos, is underwater, Jim tells us. And now we're going to take it over to Dr. Steve Lyons, a hurricane expert here at the Weather Channel.
And Steve, you know, the center of circulation passing east of New Orleans, what kind of conditions do you think they're experiencing right now?
Well, it's not as good as you might think. The circulation is too close to New Orleans, and the left eye wall is very close to the southeastern portions. About an hour ago, when we lost contact with the radio station we were doing an interview with, a reporting site just to the southeast of downtown New Orleans in St. Charles Parish reported a wind gust to 105 miles per hour. And that was not in the eye wall. That was outside the eye wall. Now the circulation is moving just about as close as it's going to get to New Orleans, and then up into Mississippi, where they're going to get clobbered in just about an hour or two. Let me show you where the eye wall is here. Here's downtown New Orleans here, and here's the eye wall of strong winds right there. It's very, very close. You're experiencing wind gusts probably over 100 miles per hour in New Orleans, with significant wind damage associated with it. We're not certain whether or not the surge is high enough to top the levee and come into New Orleans from Lake Pontchartrain, but the winds have been out of the east, piling water up, and now they're coming out of the north, and will be very shortly even more so. Now the real threat, though, is past Christian, Mississippi. 1969, Category 5, biggest surge on record, 24 feet. They may get something very similar to that as the eye wall comes just into that area near Biloxi, past Christian, Gulfport area over the next couple of hours, where the winds are going to increase very, very quickly here. Now let's look here at where we think the surge is going to be the highest. Right in the past Christian area, which is right in there, Gulfport, Biloxi, 16 to 22 feet is what we're expecting in there. It's possible it could be a little higher than that. That record surge for North America is 24 feet. In the meantime, high surge possible also over here in Alabama and all the way into the Florida Panhandle, where we have huge wave conditions there. Let's look at those. First of all, the waves offshore here are not going to affect the coast too much, but over here they're going to inundate extreme eastern Alabama, and the western Florida Panhandle has very high surf. It's scouring the coastline. There's a very strong current pulling from east to west, and the beach is eroding very quickly there. A lot of the sand is disappearing. So we've got the sand problem, the beach problem with waves here. We've got the wind problem in New Orleans, and we've got the surge problem in the greater New Orleans area possibly, and definitely in Mississippi. But that's not the only thing we've got. We've got the wind damage potential. We think there's a lot of tree damage there. Obviously, a lot of power lines are out. We have some structure damage. I'm sure the greatest threat for that is in here with a Category 4 hurricane, and that's going to be spreading north, primarily into Mississippi over the next 12 to 24 hours, but some of that damage could be occurring all the way over into Alabama as well. So the structure damage is a possibility. And not only that, we've got a lot of power outages. We know that already. New Orleans, Mobile, Gulfport, Biloxi, and it's going to be spreading to the north into primarily Mississippi and Alabama the next 24 hours. And then farther north is a possibility. The system is accelerating to the north slightly. Right now it's moving about 15 miles per hour. It could be moving a little faster than that as it goes north. Good thing about that is less rainfall potential for flooding. The bad thing about it for a strong hurricane is it brings stronger winds farther inland, more damage for power outages. Marshall, Heather.
All right, thank you, Steve. And you know, Steve was mentioning areas like Biloxi and Gulfport. We're talking 16 to 22 feet surges here. Keep in mind, too, when he's talking about those waves of 25 to 35 feet, that's on top of the surge. So you add those together, it's going to be quite dramatic.
He's talking about an inland impact, too. If you live in Hattiesburg or Laurel or Philadelphia or Meridian, Mississippi, right along the Interstate 59 corridor, it's going to get very rough. There's going to be some trees down.
And again, let's give you the bottom line here. A very serious situation. Katrina still very intense and dangerous. Strongest part of the hurricane imminent right now.
From Gulfport, Mississippi, where the winds continue to pick up, occasionally gusting over six. Bigger tree limbs down, and in some cases even a tree down in the center of this complex into here. Power is out, and the water is really coming up here. Do we have those pictures, Mike, of Highway 90? By any chance, Mike? We are 27 feet above sea level. The water's coming in pretty quick here out ahead of the storm now, and it is high as 15, 17, 18 feet, and it's coming up over Highway 90. There is no way that you can get on the road right now. Absolutely no way. There is an access road above that, which will soon be covered as well, and the waves are lapping up. In the center of this property as well, and winds are gusting big time here, well over 60 miles an hour. So it is getting rough out here. Looks like the winds are starting to shift around a little bit too toward the east as we get closer to that eye wall. Again, folks, we'll come to you as long as we can, and the conditions allow here, but it's going to go downhill in a hurry here. Back to you.
As you can see, conditions are not good for broadcasting, but we'll stay with it as long as we can, too. Jim Cantori's in Gulfport, Mississippi, near Biloxi, where the winds are gusting to 65 miles per hour right now, and the storm surge is very, very strong.
You can see here some of the areas that we're watching here as we see the hurricane moving on shore here. We want to get the latest information on exactly where the biggest impacts will be. For that, we're going to turn it over to our hurricane expert, that is Dr. Steve Lyons.
Well, right where Jim was, he's not going to be standing outside much longer because that impact is going to be probably the worst of any place on coastal Mississippi. Here's the circulation moving to the north, ever so slightly east of due north. There's downtown New Orleans. Now, I was just talking to a radio station, WWL, and they went off the air. Power's out there in many parts of New Orleans, and of course trees are going down. But they're just getting the periphery of the western eye wall. Now let's look at what's going to happen with the radar imagery here. Here's the primary eye, and look at the right front quadrant. Very, very powerful bands of heavy rain heading right toward the coast of Mississippi near Biloxi, Gulfport, Waveland. Waveland, we were looking at some water rises as high as 8 to 9 feet. The wave gauge has failed there. We think the water rise is going to be much higher than that. In fact, let's look at our surge water level rise impact, and there we see it. We've honed in on the place that's going to get the biggest impact, we think, from this hurricane. We're not too certain about what's going on around Lake Pontchartrain in New Orleans, but we think the strongest and highest surge is going to be right along the Mississippi coastline, 16 to 22 feet, and that's going to happen in the next 2 hours or so. So take cover, get out of the lower water areas if you're there immediately. And that's going to be in a very small area right near the right front quadrant of the eye wall, and it's going to drop away quickly to the east of that. In the meantime, there's a circulation moving to the east of New Orleans, right toward the coast of Mississippi. Back to you.
All right. Thanks, Dr. Lyons. From Louisiana to Florida, coastal residents are bracing for Hurricane Katrina. ABC's Darren Lynn is in Mobile, Alabama. He joins us now. Darren, what effects are you seeing from the storm?
Marshall, the situation right now is that we are feeling some of the winds, the gusts anywhere between 40 and 50 miles per hour, but we're lucky we're in a fortified area against a very big building, so we're feeling some of the wind come. You can feel it sting on your face when it does happen. The rains here, forecasters expected between 10 and 15 inches. An emergency management official here in Mobile told us that their worry is flooding. Storm surges expected to be anywhere between 10 and 15 feet. You add that to these rains that are coming down pretty heavily right now, and they're worried that part of that downtown will be flooded out.
All right, thank you, Darren. We'll check in with you later, too. We just got a new report, 10 to 15 feet tide level in Mobile. Looks like it's going to flood downtown Mobile. And we'll have more on that in just a minute. First, the travel desk.
Certainly a lot of precautions that you need to take, and for folks traveling, many hurries out of the question.
Yeah, and you can imagine with that surge, a lot of places being closed if they officially can close them, you know, and if they can't get to it, just use some common sense. vigilant and definitely stay away from those flooded areas. Anywhere along that Gulf Coast, you're going to have some problems today. Other problems that we're going to continue to experience, well, at the airports, New Orleans, Gulfport, Mobile, and Fort Walton all closed. Chicago, no delays, but Philadelphia, you've got about 40 minutes right now. Low clouds and fog all up parts of the East Coast, even some showers. Boston, so watch out for that same condition. Delays are possible for Pittsburgh. He'll actually maybe get some of those thunderstorms, bands reaching far into the Ohio River Valley with this Katrina. And also for Atlanta, you'll see some of that moisture. That tropical moisture pushes in. Heavy rainstorms, delays are very probable for today. So as we continue off and take a look at that Gulf Coast, we're going to see the Interstate 10 is going to be just a mess today. In fact, into parts of Louisiana, that's officially closed, but really I wouldn't suggest travel anywhere along this because of the heavy areas of the wind and rain. So we'll have all of that coming up and a look at your week ahead.
Welcome back to Hurricane Central. I want to take you for a look at the bottom line from Katrina, as it made it onshore, but it will make it onshore again.
Well, you know, Katrina is a very intense and dangerous hurricane here. The strongest part of the hurricane is imminent here on the Mississippi coast. We still have a lot to get through. Don't think that we are out of the woods by any means at this point.
Exactly. Just noting that it was an additional landfall doesn't mean it's the intense landfall. We still have a major landfall up ahead of us over the next 2 to 3 hours.
Stephanie Abrams is live in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. Stephanie, how's it looking in your part of the neighborhood?
Well, not so good. I know that the storm is some 250 miles to my west, but we are actually seeing the roads already flooded here. And to talk more about that, here's our Okaloosa County Sheriff, Sheriff Morris. It's a rough morning. What's it looking like on the roads out there?
Sure is. You know, we just got Highway 98 open a month ago from the last storm, Dennis, and we've had to close it down this morning because the water breached both lanes. We're hoping that with the tide going out that we'll be able to save Highway 98 today.
And have you had any evacuations in Okaloosa County?
We've done the low-lying areas, especially down on the water areas, and encouraged everybody to leave because of the high surf.
And we've actually seen some people escaping the storm into Okaloosa County.
Matter of fact, this hotel we're at is full of people from Biloxi and from New Orleans.
So what's your biggest concern? Are you worried about power outages, the streets flooding? What's the biggest concern?
Well, we always are worried about the water, you know, because that creates the biggest problems for us. But we're just hoping everybody in Okaloosa County will stay off the road today, let the storm pass, and we'll have a nice day tomorrow to deal with it.
All right, thanks for keeping us safe, Sheriff, and we'll see you later. All right, guys, so even though I want to let everyone remember that even though the eye is 250 miles to our west, you're getting affected Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and here into the Florida Panhandle. We have had gusts to tropical storm force, and that water is looking nasty, and it continues to knock up against these sand dunes. And thankfully, we have these sand dunes because I'm telling you, the water is right up to them. They said in Ivan, all the water and sand was pushed into the first floor here. Doesn't look like we will see that today, thankfully, but where they don't have the sand dunes, that's where the problem is. That's where the water is rushing over the road, Heather and Marshall.
And not too far away from where Stephanie is, Escambia County, Santa Rosa County is under a tornado warning right now. These are live pictures you're seeing from Fort Walton Beach. The water level continues to rise in the Fort Walton Beach area. Highway 98 has been closed in some sections around Destin and Fort Walton Beach.
We're going to turn it over now to Nicole Mitchell, who's also a hurricane hunter. And interesting, this weekend you were flying, and you know, in Biloxi you had to try to fly your mission. Folks were trying to evacuate. They're trying to get their families to safety.
Yeah, some of us reservists come in from out of town, but a lot of them live right in that area.
Sure.
There's some full-time people that live in the area, and so yeah, they're trying to continue the mission, in which they did very successfully, but also at the same time evacuate a base, evacuate planes out, board up their own homes, and even take care of their families. So here's a look at, you know, some of the things that are being monitored. Obviously, as you fly through the storm, you're monitoring the winds, the pressures, and all that details as the hurricane continues to intensify, reporting that back to the Hurricane Center.
Thanks, Nicole. Speaking of that, the center of the eye wall approaching New Orleans, just about 18 miles to the south at this point.
We're in a little bit of a lull here as far as the wind, but the rain continues to pound down in Covington, Louisiana. just north of Interstate 12, north of Lake Pontchartrain. We're still expecting the worst here within the next couple of hours as the eye of powerful Hurricane Katrina passes by just to our east.
No lull this morning here in Mobile, Alabama, Jeff. We've got winds now approaching hurricane force and gust, and still this lashing horizontal rain. We'll have an update, too, on the road and power situation in the area next.
It is 5:30 as we continue our special storm alert coverage of Hurricane Katrina. I'm Heather Tesh.
And I'm Marshall Seas. Thanks for joining us this morning. Let's get right to it as we take you to Gulfport, Mississippi. This is new video just in of some of the damage that's beginning to occur. And I say beginning because this eye wall is still not to Gulfport, Mississippi. It's in the New Orleans area.
And keep in mind that we do have a tornado warning in Gulfport, Mississippi. As Marshall mentioned, that eye wall now, it's about 25 miles from the Gulfport region here, and we do have tornado force winds in the eye wall. That's
100 to 120 mile per hour winds will begin soon. As for folks in Long Beach, Gulfport, Waveland, you name it, around New Orleans, the eye south-southeast of New Orleans, downtown New Orleans, by about 18 miles.
And our team of meteorologists has fanned out across the Gulf Coast to cover the arrival of Katrina. We'll talk to storm tracker Jim Cantori in just a moment, and we have Jeff Morrow, who is in Covington, Louisiana. Mike Seidel is in Mobile, Alabama. We're going to begin with Jeff Morrow. Jeff, we are waiting and watching here as Katrina continues to move closer. Have you been able to tell if there's been a huge increase in the winds?
Heather and Marshall, thanks very much. Again, things here have deteriorated this morning. The wind is in a little bit of a lull now, but that's the way it is. We get in between these bands. It's still raining, but it's not quite as windy. Then the next band will come through. Now, we've already had some tree damage down in our immediate area. In fact, a smaller tree branch came flying down there a little bit earlier, and some pine tree limbs have snapped off. But there's a little bit more widespread damage in some areas. Let's go ahead and go to the video here. We were out within the last hour shooting some of this. Again, not very many people out on the road in this driving rain. Again, earlier winds gusting as high as 50 and 60 miles an hour. Maybe just the occasional police cruiser going by. But you can see that there has been some tree damage here, and some fairly large trees have come down in some of these very strong wind gusts. Again, a very nasty day to be out on the roads. I hope everybody is staying in and just waiting this one out. It's going to be a few more hours until we see the worst of it. Then as the eye passes by, and as far as folks here are concerned, the farther away to the east we can get that eye, the better off we're going to be, because we won't get maybe so much into the eye wall. And the damage, hopefully here, we can hold to minimal tree damage. Now, power is out in this area. It has been just about all morning, since about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And again, there are some big trees, so if you are out, you may run into some problems on some of the roadways. Again, behind me here, not quite as windy as it has been, but the rain continuing to pound down, and that's going to cause some localized flooding here, obviously, as we head through the course of the afternoon. Heather and Marshall, we'll keep you updated as long as we can. Let's get back to you.
All right, that was Jeff Morrow, and we also have Jim Cantori in Gulfport, Mississippi, who doesn't have a signal in order to get a video shot to show us what's going on.
Well, and because of that, he's going to join us on the phone here. And Jim, what is the most impressive thing that you have seen so far with Katrina?
Well, Heather and Marshall, I want you guys to imagine like a fall day where the leaves have already turned color, and all of a sudden this big gust of wind comes along, and you get all these leaves just coming off the trees. Well, we just had that kind of an image here with, I don't know what this gust was or what came through here. Maybe it's a tornado vortex or whatnot. That can happen. We are under a tornado warning, or we were just a little while ago. But I'm telling you, it's just going downhill in a hurry here. We brought our satellite dish down. There's some stones on top of the roof here, on top of the tar paper. They've kind of come down, hit the top of the truck a little bit. So that's kind of been an interesting sound. We thought it was hail. We're like, there's not hail with this. We're probably seeing some stones from that roof. But you can see some of the pictures that we've shot. And it's just getting nasty around here. You've got obviously shingles flapping up and down. We have some large tree limbs down, not to mention tree limbs down. And worse than that, all right, here's what's going on. Highway 90 along the coast, where everyone goes and gets access to these casinos, is literally underwater right now. I mean, this water is lapping over the top of Highway 90. So this is very misleading. There is a highway under that. That's the image I want you to vision here. And there is a highway under that. There's an access road on top of that. which is another 10 to 12 feet up. But we are thinking, especially looking at some of and hearing some of the data that's coming in now, some of the waves offshore, 40 to 50 feet. We're certainly looking at a tremendous water rise coming here to the Gulfport area. We're 27 feet up. We feel like we're going to be out of the surge area. Obviously, we can even get to higher ground than that with this building that we're in. So, again, the next hour or two ought to be pretty interesting when that maximum surge potential certainly is realized here in the Gulfport area. Right now, guys, we're just kind of hunkered down. We'll bring you phoners as long as we can, but a dangerous situation. Nobody needs to be outside, and everyone, obviously in southern Mississippi, needs to take cover and ride this thing out because the worst of this is coming in right now.
All right, thanks, Jim. That was Jim Cantore reporting live from Gulfport, Mississippi by phone. Now, understand that he's still 70 to 80 miles away from the eye wall, dealing with the storm surge in the eastern quadrant.
And as we look at this, too, that surge is so massive across this area, it's going to cause widespread damage. Katrina is still a very intense and dangerous hurricane. The strongest part of the hurricane imminent now on the Mississippi coast. We'll be back.
Well, ferocious Katrina continues to make it on shore. Thanks for joining us. Hurricane Central here at the Weather Channel. I'm Marshall Cease.
And I'm Heather Tash. Gulfport, Mississippi is one of those places that has gotten hit very hard here. You can see some of the damage that we're already finding here with some of the trees being knocked down. And look at here, too, some of the roofs. And you can see that it's starting to rip some of the shingles off of that. It's going to get a lot worse, too.
Jim Cantore has been reporting live from Gulfport, Mississippi. The last report by radio or by telephone because we're unable to get a signal through that mess that you're seeing on your screen right now. We have some highways underwater there. The Highway 90, which is a major thoroughfare to the casinos, is underwater, Jim tells us. And now we're going to take it over to Dr. Steve Lyons, a hurricane expert here at the Weather Channel.
And Steve, the center of circulation passing east of New Orleans, what kind of conditions do you think they're experiencing right now?
Well, it's not as good as you might think. The circulation is too close to New Orleans, and the left eye wall is very close to the southeastern portions. About an hour ago, when we lost contact with the radio station we were doing an interview with, a reporting site just to the southeast of downtown New Orleans in St. Charles Parish reported a wind gust to 105 miles per hour. And that was not in the eye wall. That was outside the eye wall. Now the circulation is moving just about as close as it's going to get to New Orleans and then up into Mississippi, where they're going to get clobbered in just about an hour or two. Let me show you where the eye wall is here. Here's downtown New Orleans here, and here's the eye wall of strong winds right there. It's very, very close. You're experiencing wind gusts probably over 100 miles per hour in New Orleans with significant wind damage associated with it. We're not certain whether or not the surge is high enough to top the levee and come into New Orleans from Lake Pontchartrain, but the winds have been out of the east piling water up, and now they're coming out of the north, and will be very shortly even more so. Now the real threat, though, is past Christian, Mississippi. 1969, Category 5, biggest surge on record, 24 feet. They may get something very similar to that as the eye wall comes just into that area near Biloxi, past Christian, Gulfport area over the next couple of hours, where the winds are going to increase very, very quickly here. Now let's look here at where we think the surge is going to be the highest. Right in the past Christian area, which is right in there, Gulfport, Biloxi, 16 to 22 feet is what we're expecting in there. It's possible it could be a little higher than that. That record surge for North America is 24 feet. In the meantime, high surge possible also over here in Alabama and all the way into the Florida Panhandle, where we have huge wave conditions there. Let's look at those. First of all, the waves offshore here are not going to affect the coast too much, but over here they're going to inundate extreme eastern Alabama, and the western Florida Panhandle has very high surf. It's scouring the coastline. There's a very strong current pulling from east to west, and the beach is eroding very quickly there. A lot of the sand is disappearing. So we've got the sand problem, the beach problem with waves here. We've got the wind problem in New Orleans, and we've got the surge problem in the greater New Orleans area possibly, and definitely in Mississippi. But that's not the only thing we've got. We've got the wind damage potential. We think there's a lot of tree damage there. Obviously, a lot of power lines are out. We have some structure damage. I'm sure the greatest threat for that is in here with a Category 4 hurricane, and that's going to be spreading north, primarily into Mississippi over the next 12 to 24 hours, but some of that damage could be occurring all the way over into Alabama as well. So the structure damage is a possibility. And not only that, we've got a lot of power outages. We know that already. New Orleans, Mobile, Gulfport, Biloxi, and it's going to be spreading to the north into primarily Mississippi and Alabama the next 24 hours. And then farther north is a possibility. The system is accelerating to the north slightly. Right now it's moving about 15 miles per hour. It could be moving a little faster than that as it goes north. Good thing about that is less rainfall potential for flooding. The bad thing about it for a strong hurricane is it brings stronger winds farther inland, more damage for power outages. Marshall, Heather.
All right, thank you, Steve. And, you know, Steve was mentioning areas like Biloxi and Gulfport. We're talking 16 to 22 feet surges here. Keep in mind, too, when he's talking about those waves of 25 to 35 feet, that's on top of the surge. So you add those together, it's going to be quite dramatic.
He's talking about an inland impact, too. If you live in Hattiesburg or Laurel or Philadelphia or Meridian, Mississippi, right along the Interstate 59 corridor, it's going to get very rough. There's going to be some trees down.
And again, let's give you the bottom line here. A very serious situation. Katrina still very intense and dangerous. Strongest part of the hurricane imminent right now. Welcome back. Here we are in our storm alert mode here with Hurricane Katrina. Some not so good news coming out of New Orleans here. The Superdome, where about 10,000 people are inside, it has a leak in it now. Now, the good news is that it's only one part of the stadium. The people inside are remaining calm. They are being moved from one area to another area that is safer. But the power is actually out there in the dome. They're using backup generators for some light, but they are not getting any air conditioning in that area.
Exactly. Those generators will not support the air conditioning, but it will support electricity. And still, they're undercover in a very strong place.
We're going to talk, too, about some of the rain threat that'll continue to press inland with this system. This system is not going to go away very quickly. It's going to continue to send a lot of moisture northward. You'll see a lot of this, as well as power outages and winds working right on up into Tennessee.
We've got more coming back. Stay tuned to Hurricane Central here at the Weather Channel.
Hurricane Katrina makes landfall. Stay with us for the latest in-depth analysis, live reports from the field, weather experts, meteorologists, and hurricane hunters telling you what's happening, why it's happening, and what's next. The Weather Channel, Hurricane Central.
The Weather Channel is brought to you by this cable or satellite provider. You can also get reliable forecasts from the Weather Channel through this radio station.
The Weather Channel, Hurricane Central. Coming up, the latest on Katrina. But now, you're local on the 8s. Katrina coverage continues here on the Weather Channel, Hurricane Central.
Hurricane Katrina continues to pound this part of Louisiana. I'm Jeff Morrow, and I'll be reporting live here just north of Lake Pontchartrain in Covington. Again, sheets of rain coming in, some tree damage. We'll show you exactly what it looks like in a live report coming up.
And Jeff, hurricane-force wind gusts now raking southern parts of Alabama. The coast is getting ripped by high surf and surge, and we're getting lashed by heavy rain. The power is now out.
Well, good morning, and thanks for joining us here. You are watching our special storm alert coverage of Hurricane Katrina. I'm Heather Tesh.
And I'm Marshall Cease. Well, it is now the center of circulation as we take you to Gulfport, Mississippi. 94-mile-per-hour sustained winds here, 100-mile-per-hour wind gusts. And its center of circulation places it about 40 miles southeast of New Orleans, 65 miles southwest of Biloxi, Mississippi.
We are also very concerned about tornadoes at this point, and we do have some tornado warnings that are in effect around this region. Now, along the eye wall, too, you're going to have winds here that are similar to tornadoes.
And that's why tornado warnings have gone into effect, not just for specific tornadoes, which are a likelihood at times today, but also because the eye wall itself is winds will be 100 to 125 miles per hour at St. Tammany, Hancock, and Harrison counties, St. Tammany Parish, of course, Long Beach and Gulfport, Mississippi, Harrison County, and also St. Tammany.
Our team of meteorologists is fanned out across the Gulf Coast to cover the arrival of Katrina.
Jeff Morrow is in Covington, Louisiana. Storm tracker Jim Cantori in Gulfport, Mississippi, and Mike Seidel in Mobile, Alabama.
And Jeff, let's start with you. Are the winds picking up this hour?
Yeah, they are, Heather and Marshall. As a matter of fact, we're getting some pretty strong wind gusts here. Some of the strongest we've seen so far. That's already brought down some trees you can see here behind me. Some of these other smaller, they look like Bradford pear trees, will probably be toppled over. Also, we've got, if we can pan over here, we can see that we've got a lot of big pines here. We're going to have to watch out for some of those tree limbs snapping off. Again, behind me, you can see a little bit of the power of the wind kind of whipping everything sideways behind me. Let's show you, we were out a little bit earlier, we got some video. We'll show you what it looked like. Again, some of the bigger trees that have come down, and also pretty much how deserted the roadways are here. And that's really heartening to see that everybody is pretty much staying off the roads. Just the police, some emergency vehicles, occasionally you'll see those, but pretty much everything else is deserted. Everything else is buttoned down, and people have even evacuated out of this area. Of course, there are a lot of hotels right near where we are, because this is along Interstate 12. And a lot of people have actually evacuated out of the New Orleans area across Lake Pontchartrain, as we did, up to this area. So you got a lot of people hunkered down in their hotels. The power has been out all morning in this area. So hopefully they're doing okay. Oh, that's getting a little bit strong now as it's blowing me a little bit sideways here. Again, the eye of this hurricane appears to be passing by to our east. So that's why the winds are out of the north. They're blowing from north to south. Now that kind of a wind direction is going to blow against Lake Pontchartrain from the north. That will blow that water down toward New Orleans. And again, we're not done yet. Even though the eye is passing to the east of New Orleans, and that's actually a little bit of a better scenario, there's still going to be strong winds over Lake Pontchartrain, and there's still going to be some flooding. We just don't know how much it will be at this point. We'll keep you updated from here, Heather and Marshall, as long as we can keep broadcasting in these kinds of conditions. Back to you.
All right, and you know, we're just getting some interesting information here too coming in from New Orleans, where there are lampposts that are down, there's siding that is flying too through the air here, and the western eye wall is just east of New Orleans.
Right over Metairie, which is just to the east of New Orleans, and not too far from where Jim Cantori is stationed in Gulfport, Louisiana.
And let's get the latest coming up here from you in Gulfport, Mississippi, right, Jim?
Yeah, that's where we are. We're hunkered down, satellites down, etc. as a result of the wind. You guys know, I mean, you know, before our maximum gust was 62 miles an hour. You just came out with that 94 sustained at the Gulfport EOC, which is right around the corner from us. 100-mile-an-hour gust. We just had a 118-mile-an-hour gust at Pascagoula, which is off to my east. 118 miles an hour. We are under tornado warnings up and through here. And again, each one of these little pockets that rolls through with the core of the storm will produce and can produce tornadoes. You're not going to see them, but they can produce these excessive winds. They're going to bring down the winds. One of the biggest problems that we are having right now is with the surge. All right, water is coming up all over US 90 right now. Okay, it is all over US 90. So where I was staying the other day, guys, in the Quality Inn, which is south of US 90, it is water, and given the size of these waves that are coming in, I would not be surprised if the water was lapping up to the second floor of that hotel. So the room I was staying in is now completely underwater. Places like Treasure Bay, the Hooters, any of the buildings that are south of I-90 on the water side are being absolutely crushed right now with the surge that's coming in. And that water is going to get at least 10 to possibly 15 feet higher than it is right now. So we have the surge coming in as we speak. Winds, again, 90 to 100 miles an hour in gusts. 118 is the biggest one we have so far in Pascagoula off to my east. What does that mean? That's a Category 2 wind, so we're talking about extensive tree damage. We're talking about damage to some homes. Perhaps even entire roof structures may be undermined as a result of that kind of wind. So it's getting bad here, no question about it. And as long as we can talk to you, we will. We're safe. We're in a safe spot. Cruise inside, and we will take pictures if we can, and certainly feed them back to you when we can get our satellite dish on up. Right now, we're going to protect the crew and just kind of hunker down and give you these phone reports as long as we can. Thank you. Back to you.
Quickly, I want to make an observation here to put this in perspective for you. Jim Cantore said those winds at Category 2 on a Hurricane Saver-Simpson scale, but it also equates to an F2 tornado, which begins at about 113 miles per hour.
We also want to talk to Mike Seidel, and he is in Mobile, Alabama, also feeling the brunt of this system. Mike, we've been seeing the conditions going downhill in many locations. What's it like right now in Mobile?
Well, right now we're getting wind gusts up around 70 miles an hour. That's been our peak so far. And as you can see, the horizontal rain blowing across I-65. Hardly anybody is out this morning, which is the way it should be. Everybody should be inside and away from the windows. We've had some small debris blowing by. It's not as bad as where Jeff is and where Jim is, because their winds aren't as strong as they've seen so far. But we're going to have higher gusts. Well, we should get a gust over 100 miles an hour, because we've got another 4, 5, 6 hours as we get into the meat of the eastern side, which is the worst side of the storm. The wind has taken down power lines and trees, and our power here at the hotel has just gone out in the past 30 minutes. So far at the airport here in Mobile, just about 7 miles away, we've had 2 1/4 inches of rain. We're expecting 5 to 8 inches of rain here. And unlike what we saw in South Florida with a 15 to 20 inches of rain, we don't expect that here, because the storm is moving at twice the speed. Remember when Katrina made landfall in southeast Florida, Miami-Dade County and Broward County back last week, it was only moving at 5 or 6 miles an hour. Now it's more than double that speed. So we're in better shape from a rainfall perspective. But again, a lot of wind and rain, and the tornado threat continues right on through this afternoon. Heather and Marshall, back to you from Mobile.
All right, I want to put this again to tell you where the center of circulation is. The western eye wall just here at just about Chalmette. I would put it right over Chalmette, south of New Orleans.
And we want to mention, too, that, with all the damage that's going on, there's going to be a lot of problems like this happening in Covington. Right now, there is a home on fire. It's an electrical fire, but crews cannot respond to this fire because the winds are too strong. Unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of situations like this where things are just going to get out of control.
This is now a 30-mile wide eye, 923 millibars. Winds are still 135 miles per hour around the center of circulation of Hurricane Katrina, moving north at 15 miles per hour.
New Orleans really feeling the brunt of this system now. Very dangerous, as we have items that are flying through the air across the region. And here's some new video right now from Gulfport. You can see the flooding of Highway 90.
We just got Highway 98 open a month ago from the last storm, Dennis. And we've had to close it down this morning because the water breached both lanes. We're hoping that with the tide going out that we'll be able to save Highway 98 today.
That was the sheriff in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. This area was battered with strong winds, intense wave action this morning. Highway 98 and other roads are impassable in the area. People are being urged to use common sense and stay inside where it's safe. You don't want to be outside in conditions like this. Thanks for joining us. Welcome back. I'm Marshall Cease.
And I'm Heather Tash. Our storm alert coverage continues of Hurricane Katrina. Very serious conditions happening now in the New Orleans area, which is getting the brunt of it. A lot of people are in the Superdome right now. That's where they are taking shelter, but a big piece of the roof there has actually turned off or been torn off.
Yep, they thought there was a leak there, but a piece has broken off. No injuries from that. Electricity also off for the air conditioning, but the generator's keeping the electricity going. Now from Louisiana to Florida, coastal residents are bracing for Katrina. ABC's Darren Lynn is in Mobile, Alabama, and he joins us now. Darren, what effects are you seeing now from the storm?
Marshall, we are seeing some very heavy winds here. We're talking 40 to 50 mile an hour sustained winds with gusts even higher. The rains, though, we are told anywhere between 10 to 15 inches of rain are expected here. Add that to storm surges that are expected to be between 10 and 15 feet, and emergency management officials here in Mobile, Alabama expect flooding throughout the entire downtown region. We are actually about 4 miles north of Mobile Bay. We actually moved from that location because we were worried that our vehicles were going to get trapped from that flooding, so we'll just have to see when the storm passes through if indeed that did happen down in Mobile Bay.
All right, that was Darren Lynn reporting from Mobile as Katrina bears down toward Biloxi, Mississippi. And now we want to take it over to Dr. Steve Lyons.
And Steve, I know you've been watching this situation. Who's getting hit the hardest right now?
Well, the western eye wall is very close to New Orleans. It's actually in the southeastern portions of New Orleans where we're seeing wind gusts over 100 miles per hour. And some of those areas are getting very close to the downtown area. If you live in a high-rise building or work in one and you're in one, go to a lower section of the floor, not all the way down to the bottom, but the winds are much higher in the higher portions of the building, and it's quite possible some of the windows could blow out of those high-rise buildings or apartments or hotel rooms. In the meantime, the right front quadrant is coming into Mississippi, and the strongest winds we think are going to be over there in that area. Also up in Slidell, you're getting the edge of the northwestern quadrant of the circulation as well. So let's zoom in on the radar imagery. Here you see the circulation. There's the eye wall, very close to downtown New Orleans and approaching Slidell as well, but the real powerful portion is right in there. That big patch there is going onshore near Waveland and past Christiane, Mississippi in about a half hour, and we think that's probably going to have the strongest wind in it of all. In association with that, that's where we think the surge is going to be the highest. We're not sure whether or not the winds that are starting to come around out of the north and northwest over Lake Pontchartrain are going to be strong enough to push any water over the levee system. It's just impossible to tell right now. But we think the highest surge will be in coastal Mississippi over the next 2 to 3 hours. Take shelter and stay away from the coast. Heather, Marshall.
All right, thanks, Steve. Now, the favorite road of folks going to the casinos is underwater.
That's right. We're talking about Highway 90 here, and this is in Gulfport, Mississippi. You can see the water covering the road here. We're going to see more problems like this throughout the morning. We're also going to take you to Stephanie Abrams, and she is in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. She'll have the latest on that area. Even though it's far away from the eye, it is getting hit hard. We're going to take you here to Gulfport, Mississippi. Here, hard to see through the lens here with all of the rain that is coming down across the area. Pretty strong winds in the region.
Very strong, 94-mile-per-hour winds. Those are sustained winds being reported at Gulfport. 100-mile-per-hour winds and gusts. Pascagoula reporting 118-mile-per-hour wind gusts, too. And we're getting some damage reports in some areas, like in New Orleans. These are unconfirmed reports of a building collapse and also flash flood warning now for Orleans Parish, also St. Bernard Parish. There's been a levee breach that occurred along Industrial Canal at Tennessee Street. 3 to 8 feet of water expected from this breach.
Also in that New Orleans, that building collapse too is in the Garden District there, and certainly there's probably a lot more of that to come. We also want to take you here to Fort Walton Beach, and that's where Stephanie Abrams is standing by. Stephanie, what kind of conditions are you seeing in this region?
Well, right now we're seeing our winds sustained around 30 miles an hour, the winds gusting to 45 miles per hour. That means tropical storm force gusts here. Now remember, tropical storm force winds fall in that diameter, that threshold of 39 to 74 mile per hour winds, and we are seeing a southeast wind. You see we are on the east side of the system, counterclockwise flow like this, so we're getting that southeast wind here, and it is coming right off this nasty ocean. Unfortunately, we have these dunes here. They're built up about, we're guesstimating around 15 feet. They have sea oats well planted in here to help them as well, and the places where we don't have these dunes, the water's actually washing over onto the roadway, so some of the roads are closed. Now, people did get out of the Mississippi and Louisiana coast before those roads closed, and we're seeing a lot of them staying actually right here.
No, I'm just hoping to go back and have a house that's standing. You know, when you live on the water, you kind of, that's one of the things that you have to set your mind to, that once someday a big hurricane like this one's going to hit you and you may lose everything you have. So that's just part of living on the water.
Now, his house, he said, was about 100 feet away from the Gulf, about 12.5 feet in elevation, and it's located right between Biloxi and Pascagoula. So we're hoping that he gets some good news when he gets back, but that might not be the case. One of the main concerns here, we are under a tornado watch until noon. And of course, what we're worried about is those winds coming off that smooth ocean. They'll be going very fast higher in the atmosphere, but at the lower levels, once it hits the earth and it runs into that friction, that's when we're going to get that spinning and that twisting motion. So Heather and Marshall, it's imperative that people, you know, don't think, oh, we escaped, we're doing okay. We've got winds, we've got sand, we've got the roads covered, and a tornado watch.
As you probably know, Nicole Mitchell is part of the Hurricane Reserve Hurricane Hunters. You're looking at Mobile, Alabama, and Pascagoula, Mississippi, and you're looking at a very angry Gulf of Mexico. This particular picture is from Fort Walton Beach, where Highway 98 is closed down in some parts of that area due to high water. Now, Saturday night and Sunday morning, you flew into Katrina as it was strengthening. How was the flight?
The flight wasn't the worst I've ever been on in terms of turbulence, but we definitely had some lightning in the eye wall. That's a sign of intensification. During the flight, of course, the pressure continued to drop. That's when it was under that period of intensification, where it went through from a 3 to a 4 category during my flight, and shortly thereafter upgraded to a 5. So pressure dropping, winds going up. In fact, right as we were leaving, had about 160-mile-per-hour wind in one of the quadrants as we were passing our way out.
Thanks, Nicole. Web Live reports coming up next.